Frieren Beyond Journey's End caught me completely off guard. Between the hidden symbolism and the incredible subtle storytelling, it was hard to truly know that you were watching a masterful fantasy anime. And that's mainly because to the blind eye, the story can come off as boring. When we think of fantasy anime, two dominant genres come to mind: action-filled isekai with overpowered protagonists and high-stake battles, or comedy-driven adventures that refuse to take themselves seriously. Frieren, however, shattered the norm and took a route so unique that it can only be described as peak storytelling. Rather than just utilizing the first story as an in to the newer audience, they took a riskier start. Usually, the first episode of an anime in today's media has to be extremely compelling to hook an audience and keep them. But let's be completely honest, Frieren's first episode was nothing short of boring, but that doesn't mean it wasn't interesting. Because for a viewer, it piques their curiosity on how they were so bold to start their story the way they did. Rather than forcefully grabbing the audience's attention with action, Frieren makes a bold move. Instead of pulling us in with spectacle, it demands patience, subtly unraveling its narrative through time and character perspectives. It's rare to see an anime start with the end of an adventure. The first episode does something genius though. It establishes the weight of time. The journey is over, but for Frieren, an elf with a nearly immortal lifespan, the years spent with her comrades feel like mere moments. It's this theme of time's fleeting nature that sets the entire tone for the series. But what's even more shocking is what happens in episode 2. It continues with its slow pacing and then builds upon that patience it initially introduced. And this theme in itself is a direct reflection of exactly what happened with Frieren and her adventure. This anime doesn't tell you what to feel, it shows you. And that's where the brilliance lies. Conversations are minimal, but the weight of each carries the depth of centuries. The protagonist can often come off as an awkward introvert, and she's often more quiet than not. But Frieren's silence isn't empty. It's filled with emotion that she must learn to process. For a long-lived elf, attachment is complicated. Himmel's death isn't a big tragedy, but a soft, aching realization that she didn't cherish her time enough with him. And that realization hits worse than him dying. Frieren is very used to being alone and not having interactions because that's the natural way of most elves. So for her to grow such deep attachments to not only Himmel, but Hyder as well, can cause some conflicting emotions to her natural instincts of being alone. But what makes Frieren stand out isn't just the melancholic beauty. It's how it portrays itself to the audience. This isn't a story that just spoon feeds you emotions or dramatics. It asks you to sit with the characters, to feel their loss, their nostalgia, and the weight of time itself. It leaves us with a large sense of appreciation for the little things and reinforces that time is the greatest asset you have. And that's why Frieren isn't just another fantasy anime. It's an experience, a mediation on what it means to exist, to outlive, and to remember. There's no chosen one prophecy, no world-ending threat looming over the story. It's slow, it's quiet, and it's all about the small emotional moments that stick with you. And yet, that's what makes it so powerful. It doesn't need flashy fights or shocking plot twists to leave an impact. Instead, it sneaks up on you. It makes you reflect on your own life, your own relationships. Like, have you truly appreciated the moments you've had? Because just like Frieren, we don't always realize how precious something is until it's in the past. In the show, we don't see the battle against the Demon King. We don't see the struggle, the pain, the moments where the hero's almost lost. We're only given glimpses of those memories. Short flashbacks of Himmel, Hyder, Aizen, and Frieren standing together, looking forward to an uncertain future. And by the time we meet them, the journey is already over. They've won. And yet, that's the first moment Frieren makes us realize something important. Endings aren't always satisfying for the ones who lived through them. For Himmel and the others, this was their one great adventure, the defining moment of their lives. But for Frieren, it was just one chapter in her endless existence. She parts ways with them easily, promising to visit again in 50 years like it's nothing. But to Himmel and the rest, 50 years is a lifetime. They won't be around by then. And when that realization finally dawns upon Frieren, decades later, standing in front of his grave, it's too late. That's the first way Frieren flips the script on a traditional fantasy anime. Instead of celebrating the hero's victory, it makes us think about the aftermath, about what happens after the adventure ends, about how time doesn't stop, even for heroes. Another thing that sets Frieren apart is the protagonist. Most fantasy anime revolve around a passionate, determined main character, someone who fights for their ideals, who grows stronger, who pushes forward with unwavering conviction. Frieren is none of that. She isn't fiery or emotional. She isn't trying to become the strongest warrior or even uncover any hidden destiny. She doesn't even have a grand goal. No revenge to seek, no evil to vanquish. At first, she's almost distant, detached from the weight of her own experiences. And that's what makes her so relatable. Frieren isn't the kind of character who shouts about friendship or promises to protect everyone. She's quiet and soft-spoken. She doesn't fully understand human emotions, and not because she lacks them, but because she's never had to confront them before. She has spent centuries wandering, watching civilizations, seeing people come and go. And when you live that long, how do you not become numb to the loss? How do you not take time for granted? But over the course of the story, we see something incredible happen. Frieren starts to change, and not in some dramatic, earth-shattering way, but in the little moments. She starts to notice the value of human life, not as a fleeting thing that disappears in the blink of an eye, but as something worth cherishing. She remembers the kindness Himmel showed her, the lessons Haida tried to teach, and the strength of Eisen, and she begins to feel the weight of time rather than simply existing through it. And her journey isn't about becoming the strongest, it's about becoming human. So was Frieren's beginning slow? Yes. Was it boring? Absolutely not. It was intentional, and it was unlike anything we've ever seen before. And that's why Frieren Beyond Journey's End is nothing short of peak fantasy storytelling.